Well, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, I guess. Pastor Corey here. Just wanted to talk with you. I said yesterday during the broadcast that each day this week that I would take and talk about what happened in Jesus's life during this week. And of course, yesterday, we talked about Christ's triumphant entry into Jerusalem. But there was a lot that happened on that day, and I want to go back and take a minute to kind of recap. You see, Jesus was traveling into Jerusalem on that day, on Sunday. And before he got there was a lot that happened. He pulled his disciples over to the side, on the side of the road, and he told them about how he was going to be delivered to the authorities, to the religious leaders that would ultimately lead to his crucifixion. And in that time, he had the mother of a couple of the disciples ask that one would sit on the left and one would sit on the right hand, and we know this story. And so Jesus took that time to teach about humility. And as they went on down the road and they neared Jericho, there were actually two blind men that called out to him, and he asked them, what they would have him do for them. They said that you would give us our sight. And so Jesus restored the sight of these two blind men. And then as he nears Jerusalem and comes over the top of the Mount of Olives and looks down onto the city at the gate and at the temple, he weeps over Jerusalem because he remembers the future. And I said it that way on purpose because we know that God has seen all things start to beginning, or beginning to end. And so he laments over Jerusalem because they're not going to recognize him in his time of visitation, and that's going to bring in a time of destruction for them later on. And then of course he takes and he moves into the entry, the triumphant entry that we celebrate as Palm Sunday, where he has a king's welcome. And in the midst of all this, there's several things to take away. We talked about the fact that we have to have our eyes open and our ears open to be able to recognize what Christ is doing. And there's definitely something going on right now, and we want to have our eyes and our ears open. And the best way for us to do that is through prayer and fasting. So I hope if you are committed yourself to prayer and fasting, that you hold fast to that. And every time that God would draw on you, that you would just fall down on your face and pray and ask him for not only deliverance through this time, but also for you to have your eyes and ears open to what's going on. At the same time, we have to remember that it doesn't bring God joy when we go through these times of trials, that he does weep over us and lament over us in that. But at the same time, it's still necessary. It's necessary that God be glorified, that we be brought to him in salvation. And so God is doing a great work here today with the COVID-19. I believe it with all my heart that this is to turn the eyes and ears of his people and those who do not believe to him. And so we've got to hold on to that. So rest sure in it. So then that brings us up to today in Jesus' life, which was Monday. And see, Jesus wasn't staying in Jerusalem. He was traveling back and forth from Bethany to Jerusalem each day. So as he woke up Monday morning, he makes that same path back from Bethany over the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. And all along the way, he's hungry, and it says that he goes up to this fig tree, and being that it was not time for figs, he found no fruit on it, and he cursed the tree, and it withered away. And this is one of those little puzzling parables if you haven't really studied it. And we're just going to leave that to the side. And then he continues on into Jerusalem, and where when he came in on Sunday, he surveilled what was going on, and Monday he comes in with a purpose. He goes straight into the temple and he cleanses the temple of all the unrighteousness which is going on there. He chases out the money changers and overturns the tables and cleanses the temple yet a second time. Remember, we saw that in the beginning when Jesus started his ministry and he come into Jerusalem for the Passover that year. He cleansed the temple, and here it is, he comes into Jerusalem again to defeat death on the cross, and the first thing he does is he cleanses the temple. This is very key to us, and we need to hold on to this. Then the next thing that happens as a result of this is that the religious rulers of the day question his authority, and Jesus goes into this long dissertation, if you will, in the temple as he teaches about his authority, and he speaks in many parables and teaches a lot of truths in that day. And when all that is over, they take and they go to head back to Bethany, him and his disciples, and as he's leaving Jerusalem, he makes a statement of woe and lament about how the temple will be torn down. And so as they get up onto the Mount of Olives, the disciples ask him about that statement that he made about the end times and what will come. And this is where Jesus gives the Olivet Discourse, where he teaches on the end times and what's going to befall us in those days. And we can take a lot of solace in this, knowing that even though things are going to get worse and things are going to happen, it's all part of God's plan. It has to bear, it has to come, so that in the end, death and evil and all things can be defeated, and we can be with Christ forever. And so we want to take the time today to remember these items and do some very key things. Number one, remember the fig tree. You know, Jesus says, watch for the seasons, watch what's going on, be aware of what's coming, and be ready to bear fruit, right? We need to be bearing fruit all the time, not just when it's seasonable, so that when Christ comes, we have something for him. So we need to learn from the parable of the fig tree. Also, today is a day to cleanse your temple. You know, if you're fasting and you're praying, pray in that manner, that God would take and would cleanse you from the inside out, that he would take away your unrighteousness, things like envy, strife, any kind of hatred or frustration, things you have against other people, that God would just take and cleanse you of that and make you a vessel where you'll be able to hear from him in the days that'll come. And also we need to take and really pour ourselves into Christ's authority over all things. And I would challenge you to take and read these various passages, and I'll include them with this Facebook post so that you've got them down there. There's several of them. But read these parables, read these passages, and really pour yourself into God's authority. And remember, there are difficult times coming. Each day we draw nearer to the end, and as we draw nearer to the end, there will be trials and tribulations. These things must come, and even though they must come, there are things that we will bear, right? Just because we are faithful and we are righteous in Christ doesn't mean we'll escape them. What it means is we'll have opportunity to bear them well, that we might glorify Christ in the middle of it, just as he bore everything up to the cross so that he might glorify God the Father. In the same way, we glorify Christ in how we bear these times. So remember that. Hold on to it. Don't be discouraged. Be encouraged, because Christ sits at the right hand of the Father, and we know what the end is. So enjoyed speaking with you, really praying for you, and look forward to talking with you again tomorrow. God bless you. I love you.